Well, go on, everybody. Lennox here from Simple 123 Trader. This is the weekly playbook outlook for the week of January 23rd to the 28th. Hope everybody's doing well and are safe. I'm going to take a look at what's setting up in the markets for the upcoming week in the futures, the currencies, the indices, and Forex. Currencies, of course. Okay, so from last week, I analyzed the markets, especially in the U.S. markets and the indices, and was calling for further downside, and it has played out quite dramatically. And I'll give you my take on what's forthcoming. It's earnings season in the markets now. We saw Netflix taking a big drop, and I think it might be just sign of things to come. All right, just taking a look first at the US dollar index. I'm on the monthly time frame looking at what's transpired with this with the US dollar. We came back down to a support area, and now we have bounced and are pushing back to the upside. So I see continued strength in the US dollar. Right now we're at an interesting point similar to over here. So we could see a little bit of sideways for before we get that breakout. But on the weekly, again, quite a nice move to the upside here. And it looks like we should continue pushing to the upside, hopefully without too much fanfare in this 95 area here. All right, so let's go down to the daily and take a closer look at what's going on in here. And I can see that we're inside of a sideways flag type setup, but like I say, we could push out before long. Okay, so we might have a little bit of a battle still, but eventual direction is to the upside for the US dollar. Okay, so if that holds and that continues that way, then if we take a look at the euro, which is going to be almost the identical opposite, then go to the weekly, you can see that the euro is doing the complete opposite and is heading. You can see the flag set up here, and we should be looking for a move to the downside. Okay, so that's what would be holding out for the euro. And for the Australian dollar, similar. So that's the weekly. We would be looking, you can see we're also inside of a channel this way, and we'd be looking for a continued move to the downside here as well. Okay, so US dollar, of course, in the short term we can get a move down, but in the longer term we're going to get that. So sorry, in the short term we might get a move up, but in the long term we're going to get that move to the downside. Okay, looking at a Japanese yen, for example. Now, usually when there's calamities going on in the markets, the Japanese yen will be a safe haven. So US dollar would be weak against the Japanese yen. So even though we have US dollar strength, we're getting the US dollar weak against the Japanese yen, telling us that the Japanese yen itself is very strong. So any pullbacks would indicate further declines in the US dollar against the Japanese yen. All right, so let's take a look at that's New Zealand, Canadian dollar. How does that shape up? Okay, also hitting support area and is pushing back to the upside. So Canadian dollar is showing a little bit of strength against the US dollar currently. Will that continue into this week? It looks like we're going to get a pullback first and then it's totally possible that we could then push back to the upside with strength with the Canadian dollar. And the Canadian dollar is more of a energy-based type currency. So if energy continues its strong push, then we'll see Canadian dollar continue to the upside. All right, let's take a look at the crude oil. So this is where the energy. Okay, so crude oil still pushing very strongly to the upside. We're right at a very critical point in this move, but it looks like we should, after a bit of struggle here, might push through to more upside. So we can see this very strong move, but we've just broken to new highs, but this could be short-lived, and we could see a little bit of a struggle in here before we continue. We could even pull back into this area before we go, sort of thing. But choppiness indeed for crude oil going into this week. Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look at Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin, I was calling for from last week. I was calling for further declines down into the low 30s, and now we can see that we are indeed down into that area. What I'm seeing setting up here overall is not looking too good for Bitcoin. Here is the last line of defense, basically this support area here, and we're very close to it down into the low 30s. Also, we have a head and shoulders pattern here, which is quite interesting. So if we were to breach that head and shoulders, which we have actually breached that head and shoulders at this point, here we could see further declines. If we break through this level here, all bets are off and we're heading down into the 20s. Our next line of defense is basically down here in the 17,000 area. So Bitcoin not looking too good. Of course, when we get into this area, we could get a bounce, but I think even any bounces in here will be short-lived and will be continuing to the downside. So watch out for that right now. So it's looking pretty bleak right now for this currency, or Bitcoin. Very, very weak. So this would also be impacting other coins, of course. So Dogecoin, all of these are now snaking down and looking very bleak for them. What other coins do I have on here? I think I have the Ripple. No, that's British pound. Let's see. I think Litecoin. It too also pointing to the downside. Its last line of defense is right in this area, so we could see further weakness into the 80s here, and that's and even further. It's just looking quite weak overall. Not liking that for the coins at all. Gold. Let's take a look at gold. Gold is trying. We're on the weekly here on gold, and it's trying very hard to push to the upside. So usually gold is a metal that safety for when the markets are in turmoil, and we would expect continued strength in gold going into this week. It's looking like that's what will transpire. We'll get a further push. Any kind of pullback opportunities to continue to the upside. Okay, let's take a look at the onslaught in the U.S. Indices. So this is the Dow on the weekly time frame, and I'm just going to draw a trend line here from these lows here, and what we're seeing is at this point a breach of this line, and it's going to be really bad for the markets. If right now we've broken this trend line already and it's looking pretty weak there, so we've got then the next line of defense basically is in this area. So that's quite a drop from where we are, and looking quite bleak right now for the US 30 and other currencies. And again, what I'm seeing here is another head and shoulders pattern and a breach of the neckline. And so we have gone through that. Any kind of bounce here, and that's opportunities to sell further into this madness that's going to take place here in the next few weeks. Is going to be an onslaught that I think is going to be unrivaled. I think looking back, let's look back at 2008 as an example. Okay, so here is 2008, and what I'm talking about here, if you're with me, is in 2008 we had a meltdown in the markets. That's it. We went from there to there. That's our extent. I can draw that line here. That's like, maybe it's a little wider, maybe it's not that much, but we're not talking very much, here from in 2008 when we had that meltdown, a crash. We're up here, and we could be coming all the way back down into this area. So it's not looking very good for the markets at this moment in time. So opportunities are rife for anyone who is looking to sell this weakness. Okay, so any retraces, opportunities to sell into those bounces off the lows. All right, that's the US. That's the US 30. Let's take a look at the S&P 500, and it is similar. Quite the drop. And if I draw a trend line here as well, you'll see similar type of. Now we've broken that line here on the S&P 500, so that's not a good sign. So at this point, again, another head and shoulders pattern. So head and shoulders, very telling, and we've broken through the neckline and are heading down. So again, any retraces is just opportunities to sell into this free fall that's going to take place in the next few weeks and over months to come. All right. Lastly, let's take a look at the technology group. So US Tech is again similar. Here it is on the weekly, and it too looking quite bleak. Same type of thing. If I drew a trend line, same type of thing. Weekly on the daily, sorry, there's no head and shoulders here. I mean, if you want to call it a head and shoulders, it's a rather warped one. And if it's warped like that, it's really dramatic. So we're seeing, again, any pullback would be opportunities to sell this to the downside. So looking pretty bleak right now. We're right at the last line of defense here. So we could see, and just going to break this one down a little bit further, we could see a little bit of a bounce, starting the week off. But again, I think any kind of bounces in this area are going to be very short-lived. So be aware of that. So at this point here, we could indeed come back up and get a bounce. And everybody might think that's it, and we're starting back up again. But I think that's going to be short-lived, and we're going to be heading to the downside in a hurry. All right, so that's my take on what's happening for this week for the 123 members. Keep your eyes on the US dollar, and it will guide you into what's going on with the major currencies. Profitable trading to everyone. Be safe. We're done now. Thank you.